Welcome to the Waves of Change podcast, where we aim to inspire the listener to awaken to their purpose and take the action required to live life on their own terms. My name is Darragh Byrne, confidence and mindset coach, speaker, entrepreneur and humanitarian. I will be sitting down with creators from all walks of life who grew through the waves of change in their lives to be making the impact in the world they are today. So Jeff, welcome onto the show. First, we will start. Welcome onto the Waves of Change. And first, I will just start by acknowledging the country on which I reside and the country that I live on, and honor the original custodians of the land. So we acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation as the traditional custodians of the country we are meeting on today. We recognize their continued connection to the land and the waters, thank them for protecting this coastline and its ecosystems since time began. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend our respect to all First Nations people present and who are listening today. And without further ado, allow me to reintroduce my man, my brother, brother from another mother, incredible colleague. So Jeff Agostinelli, who is a business coach, is an ultra athlete, the host of the Next Level podcast, father of the year, the last 2 years running. David Goggins, better fucking recognize my man. Welcome onto the podcast today, Jeff.
Thanks for having me on here, brother. I'm good, man. I'm good. Good to be here.
Thank you. So, Jeff, can you just give us a bit of your background where you grew up and all of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up in Rochester, New York. So on the upper East Coast, on the northeast of the U.S. In Rochester, New York. And a big Italian family. I'm a twin, and I have an older brother who's 16 months older. So right off the bat, there were three of us really contending for attention. And funny side note is my twin and I were nicknamed Seek and Destroy. That I was Seek, he was Destroy. I was the brains of the operation. Not much has changed. So that's a fun fact. But yeah. I went to college upstate, played lacrosse, was always an athlete, and flew west after college out to California, basically to escape the cold. And I chose a number of different careers. So originally I was pre-med. I was going to do Western medicine. But what I soon found out while preparing for my medical school entrance exam was that I did not want to go down the path of Western medicine. And at the time, my cousin-in-law was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer, and my cousin was cooking a macrobiotic diet for him. So I started to see that this particular diet and this way of eating and lifestyle had helped my cousin-in-law's cancer go into remission. PSAs went from over 100 down to like nothing. And he lived 20 years longer than the medical establishment told him was possible. So instead of going the Western route, I did macrobiotics. I was a live-in private chef, did raw foods, fasting, all that kind of stuff for about 7 years. And then I started to really see a trend where people who got well seemed to have a very different disposition and way of being in life, right? Their eyes were brighter. They had a little bit more, what I would say, optimism, meaning they could see life's events as having meaning and purpose instead of the flip side where I saw people looked at life as them being a victim, right? Like everything was happening against them, and they just had a very different disposition. And I started to just see that there was more to the healing conversation that had more of a corollary in consciousness, not necessarily just on the physical. So then for the next, basically 7+ years, I got more into the fields of like consciousness and coaching and lifestyle and all that stuff. And then eventually figured out, like, how do you market this stuff? Like, what do you do? How do you tell people that you coach their life? Like I started coaching when people were like, I would say I'm a coach, and they're like, so you coach sports? I'm like, nah,
No,
No.
that's
So
really interesting.
the business coaching was a product of a need that I had to learn how to market my services. And what I inevitably did though was I brought the learnings that the skills that I acquired in, you know, building membership sites and doing launches and doing all of those things. I brought those to the people where I got trained and helped them bring all of their trainings from offline to online, and really just
Ah,
saw what was possible with information.
wow, wow,
Yeah.
incredible. One your cousin, but I'll just take it back to seek and destroy. Um, yeah, like you just literally landed yourself straight into what the movies and the Western, the movie system would the perfect Italian lifestyle straight away. Little,
Yep.
little, little gangsters, little gangsters coming out, shaking people up. And what was it like for you around there? Did you get into much trouble? Things of that nature growing up, young tearaway.
Yeah. So basically, I went to Catholic school from K through 12th grade, so 13 years.
Yeah.
And my freshman year of high school, I had the record for the number of detentions. So I had detention pretty much every day, plus Saturday detentions. And the funny thing, Darragh, about the detention in my school, they were called jugs, which stood for Justice Under God.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like talk about a shame sandwich. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so I got in a lot of
yeah.
trouble. I got into, you know, was uh definitely into drugs for a good bit of high school and college. I mean, even sold cocaine in college for 4 years, like literally like the polar opposite of what I am these days. I was very much,
Uh-huh.
for I would say, for the better part of 6 to 8 years, like really substance dependent,
Hmm.
in a huge way, like coke, alcohol, weed, everything you could possibly imagine, for a good bit of time.
Wow, incredible. And also, um, you mentioned about changing careers a bunch of different times, and
Mhm.
and then also in regards to that type of lifestyle, which I lived myself for many, many, many years. Um, yeah, that whirlwind, whirlwind. But in regards to, going through that change, like the waves of change, as the podcast is named, what was that like for you? What was that transition both mentally and emotionally to, yeah, where you're at today or out of that lifestyle?
Yeah, great question. I think, as far as, I love the name of your show too, the waves of change, because they were like that, right? Like they were waves, right? Like
Uh-huh.
I could look back and say, I wish I didn't go through that, or I wish I did something different, or I'm far behind because of X, Y, and Z, or whatever I want to form as an opinion or a belief about it. But I really
Hmm.
do believe that everything was necessary, right? Like the certain waves that came were for me to learn what I need to learn so
Hmm.
that I can then pay it forward. Right. So
Yeah.
when I have a conversation with someone who's potentially addicted to anything, it could just be a phone.
Uh-huh.
There's a very particular way that I approach that conversation, and having that embodied experience, I know how to handle it. But as far as how I made those transitions, it was as if it wasn't necessarily ultra active. It wasn't like I need to change and I'm going to do it this way. It was more along the lines of, this just isn't going to work anymore. And the awareness of, this isn't going to work anymore, I need to change, like something else needs to happen, was in a way like a doorway to what came next. And what that was initially was a Vipassana 10-day silent meditation retreat. I just kind of
Woo!
happened upon it. In fact, the girl I was dating at the time, she was working a cooking job with me in Massachusetts. I remember I was buzzing around the kitchen. I was like cooking it up. And she was like, "Hey, babe, do you want to go on a 10-day silent meditation retreat?" And I was like, yeah, let's do it. I didn't
Yeah.
even like cognize,
You're
right?
just
Didn't even
cooking
think about
away
it.
like,
I was like, yeah,
yeah,
let's do it.
I know what the
Day
fuck did I
came and
do?
day came, I'm sitting there, guys on one side, girls on the other side of like a large conference room. And they're saying, like, no notebooks, no books, no distractions. You're basically going to be meditating for 15 hours a day for 10 days. You can't talk to anybody, look at anybody, like you can't read books, can't do anything for 10 days. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, what did you get? I was like shooting the, like death stares across the room. And it was, but on the tail side, I think like most things for me, I got done with the 10 days and I was like, yo, I want to do 30.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was one of those things, very ultra mindset, right? I was like, 10 days, who does 10 days? Let's do 30.
Yeah, that David
Right.
Goggins
So
shit. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because that was my Cerseis. That was her crossover from the party lifestyle into
Mm,
where we are at today, and also in calling me in. Um, she's the life and soul of every party. Huge social butterfly, socialite. I won't call her that, but social butterfly, and she's a buzzer. If you're out on the party, she is one of the last ones there. Regard like born a man everywhere. Anyways, all of the friends that were like, when it's like all your friends, like what you would have experienced it as well, when we
yep.
start to come over this side of the world, well, over this side of being and how we live. Our friends are like, "What the fuck are you doing?" So when she was gone for 10 days of silence, they were like, "What? Like you fucking, we can't get you to shut up, And here you are going to 10 days of silence." And then the same when she came back from that, she was down on Bondi Beach, and everybody come in like, so how was it? What you know what I mean? What did you do? But like this picture 20 or 30 people mashing you with questions at the same time after being in silence for 10 days. It was overwhelming for her. But she had to go home anyways and get out of that. But what I'm getting at here is how she used that as a pivotal moment in her life. Because just to highlight for the listener, it's when you can't go out externally, you've got no other option but to go in internally, and all of your shit may come up, but it's
Hmm.
a great a lot of realizations come in. Can you speak to that more because you've experienced it yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was that simply was there was nothing to smoke, nothing to drink, nothing to do, no one to talk to, nothing to distract with for 10 days. And I remember it was about 3 to 5 days in where I was sitting, right? I was in the middle of the day. Can't really tell because the whole room's dark, but it was around the middle of the day. And I had this huge release, started crying. My knee, I was just sitting and my knee popped. It did this thing. And I just felt like a huge release. And what's beautiful, I think, too, about an experience where you just sit with something where you're not processing actively is that you just sit with it.
Mm,
Right. And I think science has confirmed this, right? I believe it's something around most emotions only last 90 seconds. Right. And
wow.
what happens is the thing that keeps these emotions or beliefs or whatever it is imprinting or revisiting is the constant play button, the rewind button that we hit all of the time. And we replay these constant stories. But it was beautiful because just being present with me for 10 days. I remember when I got out, I had the wherewithal. I remember a buddy of mine who I was living with at the time, we used to have these delicious bottle conditioned Belgian ales, right? Like the 1 liter ish size beers, the 10%
Like a
alcohol, like a
40.
Chimay or like a Duval, like a really nice beer and a cigar. I got back from the 10-day retreat and he's like, I got this ready. And I went to go like have the cigar and I was like, I just don't want this. Like
Ah.
it didn't, like it just felt my body almost as I went to perform the act was like, no, sorry, ain't gonna happen. There was like a dissonance, right? Like
Yeah, I
a
love
feeling
it.
or a vibration of like, this doesn't match anymore. And of course I had to make the choice consciously moving forward, but it was really a simple choice. It wasn't like a huge, deliberation or something I had to think about for a long time. It was just like, this just isn't what I do anymore.
Mm,
That's
mm.
it. So it was cool because I didn't have to like dissect and figure out like why I started doing X, Y, and Z or like what happened and who it was with and what the trauma was and what the thing was and the emotional pattern and feel it in my body and then transform it and then none of that. It was just cool. It's just doesn't. I don't need it. That's it. It's done.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Um, what Cersei said, she you know, she called me in there, and there was a stage where she got extremely horny. She said it was insane. She's like, all of a sudden, she felt like she was having an orgasm all over her body. You know, everything, the tingles,
Yeah.
you know, because you can feel you could, because you know, she's
Mm.
not suppressed. It was over the Christmas period too, which was another huge, like, what the fuck for all of our friends, you know. Like, she didn't know me well, she knew me. We met once, we met at Burning Man before that, but we'd not
Mm.
talked after that. So I hadn't spoke to her for 6 months or anything. But yeah, because it was Christmas time, that's the party season. It's like, they're like, what the fuck? You're going to sit in silence instead of coming to this party type of thing, you know. And that was it. She started to have like her body, feel her body, because there was
Hmm.
no cigarettes or alcohol or weed involved. You know what I mean? It was
Yep.
not emotionally muted, you
Hmm.
know. And just to touch on something you said a minute ago about, you know, emotions only lasting 90 seconds. Thanks
Hmm.
for that. That's a new teaching for me, lesson,
Mm.
learning, whatever. And also to highlight the replay button, what Jeff is speaking about is our ego and our, you know, people call it the voice in our head. Our ego could be our pain body, whatever you want to call it, but that's what he's referring to around that. And just to highlight again that, you know, our ego and this pause and replay button controls our day. So 95% of our day, our monkey mind is running the show, our subconscious, in other terms. So that's the pause and replay button that Jeff is speaking about. Um, Also, Jeff, you spoke about you know, from a young age. First of all, what age were you when you decided, you know, you weren't going to go with the medical system, like the Western
Hmm.
medicine system? And also, how far into, you know, did you start college, or did you? I don't know what it's called there.
Hmm.
It's not
Yeah,
an
like
internship.
university. Yeah.
University.
Yeah.
Did you do any classes or any semesters in that side of on that
Yeah. I
side
mean,
of the coin?
so I did undergrad, right? So I did all the, the 4 years in college as far as like to get a Bachelor of Science, right? So I had my undergrad, and then
Bachelor
what
of
was next
Science.
after that was to then take the entrance exam for med school, and then to do 4 years of med and then specialty, right? So like originally what I wanted to do was to go into neurosurgery. And that would have
Ooh.
been 4 years of medical plus 4 years of specialty. So it would have been another 8 years of school on top of what I already did.
What age were you? So another 8 years on top. So what age were you when you stopped your 4 year undergrad, Bachelor
I
of
think like
Science?
20, it was 2003. So I was 22-ish.
And here, you know what, actually, while we're on the subject of this is, thank you for bringing this to light, man. If you'd done the 4 years and the 4 years, how much debt would you have taken on your head?
More than I could count. A lot. Probably, I mean, just with probably another 200 to 400, right? And that's probably a gross under that's
Fucking
probably a
hell.
gross underestimate, honestly.
Uh, oh, wow. Wow, man. You know what? You know, like, where you know, this whole the Western system, the whole Western system, it's like, you know, you go to school, you know, you learn the robotics of memorization, that, you know, the history that they
Hmm.
want you to learn or to remember. Um, and then you go to high school, and then you know, you're sort of coerced into choosing a career. Like, 1 minute you're putting your hand up to ask, can you go to the bathroom? The next minute you're fucking signing papers of $200,000 to $400,000 in debt, which is, you know, straight into that, you know, that debt system, which is, you know, modern day slavery. In my eyes, people can have a different belief around that. And then you get the family, you buy the house, you pay your taxes, you retire at 60, 70. They're pushing it up these days. And then you live your life, you know, you live on your pension. Um, just quickly, can you touch on that system?
Yeah, that's a lot. I have mixed beliefs on it, I guess you can say. Like, I have an 11-year-old daughter. She's in North Carolina with her mom. I'm in Austin, Texas. So, right now she's getting whatever help she needs as far as education goes. But as far as like what I believe in this moment, which could change at any point in time, is that I don't particularly think that college is useful. I think if someone is like, look at like the intention for school should be, I should say it that way,
Yeah.
should be to prepare you for what's next, right? Like to just go and learn. Like for me, I
Interesting.
did like advanced math, like all kinds of advanced calculus and all kinds of things. Never have I ever needed any of that stuff. Even if I went into medicine, like where am I going to use advanced calculus?
I've no idea what you're talking about, but
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Exactly my point. It's like nowhere unless I become a statistician or like a mathematician, I'm not going to use it ever. So, yes, you could argue that it teaches you how to think. Great. Does it necessary for that long? I don't think so. I think to have typically I think when we go into college, we're like what, 16 to 18 or something of that nature. Around 18. To ask an 18-year-old, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And then to put them on that course, and then they have to like stick to it. And the old model basically says like you're on one track for the rest of your career.
Yeah.
Traditional career path says choose this thing, go to school, and then go and do it. I don't think we live in that world anymore. It's like we have the option and the opportunity to reinvent ourselves. I've gone through at least 3 major reinventions. And if someone told me that I had to do the same thing forever, I'd be like, yo, I'm sorry that you think that, but it's not going to happen. And I don't know that we're built for that per se. Sure, I think that being within one particular field for a number of years has its benefits. Obviously, like you develop a certain level of mastery, but I don't think that traditional education into the traditional workplace gives you that opportunity to diversify with the skills that you have and to point those skills in different directions. I just don't think that it's not baked into it. Like it's not built that way. So, for whatever it's worth, it's not, someone was like, oh, should I go to college? If someone asked me, I'd be like, start a business first, like go make some money. Like, what are you going to go study for 4 more years and become an English major? For what?
And
What the
then
hell's that going to do?
Yeah. Becoming a teacher, I don't know, like full respect to teachers as well, but they get fucking robbed in regards to their income. Same with, nurses and, it's a systemic. I was driving around the country here in, like we hit the road all the time.
Mm.
I don't know if it's like this anywhere else in the world. I believe it is in Ireland for sure, but all the first responders are volunteers. So you've got these level of frontline workers where they get paid minimum wage, but they have to go through all sorts of training. I don't know what it is with the fires, but teachers, and then the same with I think it's barristers and solicitors. Like there's a 4-year window where they don't get paid for anything. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but anyways, what what came up for me as you were speaking there? 2 things. The first is you nailed it with the business thing. I had a Yeah, you nailed it where you went with business, because if you were to ask, right, so these schools, who actually fronts the money for these loans,
I have no idea.
the finance? I
Yeah. I mean,
guaranteed
banks.
the Rockefeller Foundation. I guarantee they're under there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, if you were to go as an 18-year-old spotty little teenager, um, and ask for $200,000 loan to start a business, where do you think that ends up?
Oh, they tell you to F off. I saw a meme on this the other day. Like, what world do we live in that you can get a loan for $200,000 to go to college, but you can't get a loan for 10,000 to start a business? And there's a lot of truth to that. You know what I mean? It's interesting in a way where this is my view. This is not backed by science, but it's like we live in a world where teachers that aren't actually doing what they teach are teaching people about information.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So it's information passed on to people as more information. So naturally it lacks substance, right? It's a concept, it's a theory, it's history, it's something that people are being taught. Even like business school, most of those professors don't run a business, right? It's kind of like, where did we go wrong saying that people who lack experience should be the ones teaching people about a subject? I just don't understand that. Like for me, it just doesn't land in the fact of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's like, just because I pick up a book, does that mean I should teach this thing?
And you know what else? It's like it's exactly that, but it's that what would you say? It's that boxed in system. It's a system. It's just a pass on of information, not from experience, which brings me into my next chapter. Well, not my next chapter, but something that you said about, you've had three major reinventions in your life. And what I heard as you said that was you grew through your life. So a different stage of your life required a different aspect or a different profession, you know, as you grew spiritually, and all of the things, uh, we get to see what we no longer works for us anymore. Like you didn't have that cigar. Uh, and I think that change is inevitable in all humans. And part of what leads to people feeling stuck or, in that question of I don't know who I am anymore because I'm just going into that robotic cycle, go to work, go to the pub, go home, have my dinner with the family, go to bed, and that, the rat race as they call it. So just in regards to ever evolving and how you can be with those changes. So when you realized, excuse me, when you realized not the cigar. So what was your last major reinvention? What was your last major reinvention, and how were you with that? Mentally and emotionally and spiritually, all of the things.
Yeah. So I think like the last one was more personal, right? Like that reinvention was more of, like I said, I've always been an athlete. I've always trained. I've always worked out. I've always done that. And the last major reinvention was deciding to pick a sport, right? So in my mind, I became an ultra athlete at a few years ago and decided to like train for races that were 30 kilometers, 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers, now 100 miles, like looking at all of these different things to train for. So that was one kind of reinvention, but like a professional reinvention was, going from basically being a live-in private chef to then just doing, these were all businesses that I ran personally. So it wasn't like I was working for anybody, but after being a private chef, kind of started over and I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to go and do a life coaching certification, right? Like, so do life coaching, do consciousness, do things different tools to help people to make change, period. Right. So like going from being a chef to doing that, I think where I'll say the mistake I think I made in some of those transitions, and specifically the last one, and like how I do it now, if I have any major changes on the horizon, is don't burn the boats, right? Like I think a lot of people say like, oh, go all in, burn the
Fuck
boats.
you, bitches.
I think for most people, I have a very high risk tolerance, right? Like I have a higher than normal risk tolerance, right? Like I can handle a lot of change and not bat an eye, right? Like I can hold a lot. And I wouldn't say that it was a bad thing to like stop one and start the next. And I think sometimes that's just what has to happen. But when I can, right? Like when I have the choice, I'd rather build a bridge than burn a boat, right? And sometimes building the bridge looks like continuing to do the old thing, even if I'm not in alignment with it anymore, right? Continuing to do the old thing until I can. Did you like that?
Yeah, because I seen one of our colleagues as you were doing that. I envisioned her. So, anyways, keep going.
Yeah. So even if I'm not aligned with it anymore, I can still do the thing and build a bridge onto the next thing I'm doing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things, like whenever I've coached someone who was like, oh, I want to quit this job and start something new. Like, I don't like this anymore. I want to do that. I always tell them, even if it's a relationship, I'm like, don't leave something unless obviously it's a bad situation, right? Find a way to come into right relationship with that thing. So what
Mm.
that means is, like, instead of saying, I'll feel better when I get a new job, I'll feel better when these conditional statements, because they're not true. They could be true.
Carrots.
There's potential for them to be true, but they're not true in another sense. So it's like, if you can become a master at not being a bitch to circumstance, right? Like if you can be in the situation and find a way to make it better, make it fun, and leave on a good note, I wouldn't say that anything was harmed in the process of making something that's disharmonious more harmonious before you choose to segue into the next thing, relationship,
Mm.
job, whatever it is. So it's
Mm.
always like, build a bridge, find a way to make this thing like palatable in a sense, come into right relationship, and then make a change from it's a more empowered state, right? Because one is like, this thing is causing me trouble. I'm going to get rid of this thing. Therefore, I have no more trouble
Mm-hmm.
outside, right?
Mm-hmm.
External approach, instead
Aha.
of, well, I'm going to figure out a way to like kick ass at this thing, even though I don't like it. And then in that process, build a bridge to something I love.
Yeah, like using it
Yeah.
to using it as a stepping stone or an investment into your next level of growth, like
Yep.
Mario Kart or something. And it's interesting you brought in the bridge analogy because
Yep.
Preston, that's how I met Preston. So
Mm-hmm.
Preston is our mentor and his beautiful wife Alexi. The bridge experience. I don't know, have you done it?
I haven't done any of his live events.
So basically the bridge experience is basically that. How can you be, you are the bridge. It's not how can you be you. We are the bridge to all areas in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
A certain thing happens or whatever the situation may be, we are the bridge that make it mean something or that make it work for us, against us, everything. Yeah, we are the bridge in all areas of our lives. And something you mentioned earlier, Jeff, just in regards to the skill teacher, I remember now. Um, a lot of people, coaching is such a brand new industry,
Mm-hmm.
life coaching. And, you know, I seen I seen a couple of people last night that who are now claiming that they're life coaches, and I just listened to them, and they done a thing about what it is and what it's not, and I found it hilarious. But good on them for taking that, because that's where they're at now. But the further you go in, because they said basically it was like we work on your life goals and what you want to accomplish and find your purpose, and what it is not, it's not counseling, it's not trauma work. And I just laugh and tell my body that my body is shook off a lot of trauma since I started. But yeah, so what I'm getting at here is the question of, being the embodiment of what you teach. And also, can you just highlight what, you know, not the coaching industry is, coaching is, you have teachers, school teachers, and all respect to them, that are teaching the curriculum that is handed to them, and it's information on a
Mm-hmm.
page,
Yeah.
where coaching is, yeah, you fill in the blank, and the difference between the two.
Yeah. So there's, like anything, when we reference a word, everyone's got a different definition for this.
Mhm.
Specifically, even when it comes to coaching, right? Like I've had many conversations with my girlfriend, with mentors, with peers, with friends, all these different people, the difference between like coaching and consulting, and the difference between this and that, like all these different things that exist. For me personally, coaching is me asking someone questions and helping them arrive at their answer. That's all that coaching is.
Mhm. Mhm.
If I'm agreeing to be in a coaching container with someone, they set the rules. If it's their container, meaning if I'm paying them money and they're providing a service, they set up the game, right? The game of coaching. And there's
Mhm.
certain rules. They have certain beliefs. They've maybe trained in certain systems. There's a lot of different frameworks, even in psychology or in psychotherapy. There are a lot of different models, matrices, frameworks of how things potentially operate, like the victim, hero, villain, right? Like the drama triangle. That is one
Mm-hmm.
particular belief system that says everybody fits into one of these three things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, this is a separate conversation, but I think when we have to, when we rely on one model, I think we come into a bit of challenge. I was just having this conversation today. I think when we try and fit everything into one thing, it's too black and white.
Mm-hmm.
I think it doesn't leave room for interpretation. But I think coaching specifically for me, what it is it's a way for me to assist somebody in shortening their learning curve, right? Like I had a client session right before this, and I've been working with this guy for, what is this, January, at least 8 months, 9 months. And he said
Mm-hmm.
something like, he goes, back in September, and this is the results he's gotten since September. He had no coaching package or anything before that. He's like, if you told me in September that by January I was going to do over $100,000 in business, have all of these people paying me money that are big brands that are now part of my this, and all these results he's gotten over the last X number of months. He goes, if you told me this in September, he goes, I would have told you to fuck off. And I'm like, aren't you glad you didn't? Right. And it's like, I told him when we had the initial conversation, I was like, my goal as a coach is to save you 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the coaching industry, there's, and just to preface this, because I'm hearing this, I'm going to say, I'm not saying I did this for him. I'm saying I helped him produce these results. But like between September and January, he was able to, with my assistance, create a coaching package and attach this to his brand and get people enrolled in it and generate over $100,000 in a new business in the last 5 months.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people who try to do coaching for years and they don't make that much in the first 5 years, but that's because they don't invest in help.
Beautiful.
So coaching is a way to like shortcut stuff.
The quantum leap. And how did I was studying property investment. What was the book? So Rich Dad Poor Dad was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then Think and Grow Rich was another. And
classics.
they emphasized the importance of mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
Rich Dad Poor Dad is the prime example of that. He literally, that's what the whole story is around. You've got one that's all about the system, that one father who was built in the system on paper had a perfect life because he had a secure job that was in the government. So we had a secure pension.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had the rich father who was, the entrepreneur who had many businesses and many different revenue streams. So just to highlight, it's like, why would you go to, poor dad for exactly as you say? Why should somebody that's not involved in business be teaching about business? Just not teaching, but passing on the information about business. And exactly that's what coaching is for me too, is for people to arrive into the true, first of all, to release the the blockages that they can't see, the unconscious blockages, or just to bring through questioning, to bring to the surface what programs are running the show. And once they speak those programs out, they now get to choose consciously. Am I going to keep this moving forward, or am I going to let it go and choose something new? And also a part of that is to the quantum leap. We both done that course together. The fast forward to, elevation of consciousness. So from a higher level of consciousness that they now get to navigate life on a different plane, and also slow down to the speed of wisdom, and of everything from now on is now a choice. It's no longer a habit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a beautiful analogy that you used as well, and also, from the trauma aspect of it. And I don't know if you work with this as a business coach. Do you? First of all,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the end, it's not. it's like as they
I
say,
call
self.
myself a business coach, bro, but like, it's,
Yeah, on
I coach more on
that.
performance than I do on business, right? Like business is
Hmm.
simple. Like
Yeah.
business is not difficult, right? Like to have a service that provides value to your customers, if you have the skills, it's not hard to
Hmm.
sell that, right? Like it
Uh-huh.
should sell itself. But like when it comes to um, coaching or even in the business context, there's a business owner. And
Hmm.
most limitations are in a business are because of the mindset of the business owner, period.
I love
I
it.
mean, I've seen this hand over fist like all day, every day. Like that is 100% the problem. It can't not be the problem.
Uh-huh. 100%. And also, as you say that, like, this is it. When certain things, when you remove certain stories and traumas and uh, habits from your life, you energetically become a magnet to all that you desire. It's fucking insane. Like it's actually insane. And as I said that previously, it's like Preston, our mentors teaches us to, sell them what they want, but give them what they need. So
Mm-hmm.
so so on the outside, they like, they think they're entering a business program, but in reality, it's a personal development program because it's this energetic cleanse of the body. And once the body is sort of cleansed, you become a magnet to all that which you desire and you take, and also with the action required. So just from an energetic standpoint as well, uh just about not to have the skill teacher versus the coach, but just to use it as an example of you know during each transition of your life, the wave of change as such, but energetically and emotionally and mentally, um, h- being the embodiment of your coaching or your coaching, how important is it that but same it can be energetics or it can be business, like a business mentor or a property investment mentor, whatever it is, but how important is it that your teacher, your guide, your coach has embodied what they're teaching.
It's a must. Like it's not a maybe, right? It's like I'm not going to go to someone who's overweight to learn how to lose weight.
Mm,
Why? I'm not going to go to a sick doctor, someone who's sick all the time, to help me get well.
mm,
I'm not. This is me. This is personal preference, right? Like I don't see the point, right? Like if I'm going to go to someone who this is twofold, right? So there may be somebody who has in the business realm, right? If someone has a track record of coaching other businesses and they get results for those businesses, cool. That's embodied. They can produce a result. Their
mhm,
business
mhm,
may not look like it does what it should do, but they have the results to prove it, right? The
uh-huh,
difference meaning like if someone is a business coach and they have business coaching clients that are successful, great. If someone is an expert and they have courses, coaching, whatever else it is, and their business is doing great, and they maybe occasionally, aside from the transformational courses they have, do some business coaching, that's great too, right? They have experience. But to go to someone who potentially has never helped another business or who does not have a successful business,
ah, mhm.
what are they like? Sure, they could teach me something maybe, but like if they don't have the experience of doing it for themselves or for someone else, like they have no business teaching me that.
Mm. And that's just to highlight the old paradigm, the school system, the college system, and all
Mm-hmm.
of that. Like if you've got these educators, which full love and respect to them, it's just it's an incongruence.
Mm.
And then also for them, like if they're constantly teaching this, just passing on the not not the wisdom because they're not embodying it, but the information. Like, how excited are they about that? Do you know what I mean? Because it's already a fit program that they're going, right, here's the information, you've got to give it to these kids, and they've got to get 80% in their tests at the end of the program, you know. So how much does that light that person up? You know what I mean? Like, you wake up in the morning, you know you're serving a purpose in the world. Like, how excited are they about their life to be you know, passing on this information?
Yeah. Is there a question in there?
Yeah, no, it's just highlighting that. Actually,
Yeah.
we'll segue on to, yeah, ultra athlete. Yeah, man. Yeah, you start. You go with it. Where did it start for you?
Yeah. So it was interesting too, because the way that the whole ultra stuff started was I think it was 2019. Yeah. So 2019 was my first ultra race in November, and it was a 50K. And originally, when I set the goal for this, I had just gotten divorced. I was living in my own place, and I was kind of like, I felt kind of beat up, right?
Mhm.
And I had the notion that I wanted to choose a sport, right? I thought to myself, I'm super into training. I like doing all this stuff. And it's harder these days to commit myself to doing something without there being a very tangible outcome, right?
Mhm.
Meaning, just looking fit, feeling fit wasn't enough. I wanted to, in essence, like put my fitness to the test. And I sat
Ah.
there and I thought, I was like, I did a half marathon, a couple of years ago. I could do a marathon. And then I was like, it's just too like vanilla, too like housewife, kind of boring. Like,
For
I
anybody,
wanted,
this is Jeff, man, in a nutshell. It's all or nothing.
yeah,
All or
exactly.
nothing.
So I was like, I could do a half marathon, or excuse me, I could do a marathon. And then I had a podcast for 5 years called The Next Level. And on there, I interviewed this guy, Charlie Engel, who ran across the Sahara Desert, 111
Ooh,
days, 50 miles a day. There's I think it's called
fuck.
Running the Sahara, is the
Mm-hmm.
name of the film. It's a
Is it
documentary
document? Oh,
narrated by
lovely.
Matt Damon.
Lovely.
Great film. Him and two other guys. I won't ruin the story for you, but him and two other guys ran across the Sahara. You have to watch it to find out what happens. So, anyways, I was sitting there in my place, and I remember chatting with Charlie, and I thought to myself, oh shit. I knew as soon as Charlie's name and face popped up in my head that I was going to just basically choose to do an ultra. So I was like, all right, cool. I'll do a 50K. And I texted Charlie and I was like, hey, any advice on running a 50K? I was like, I have a training plan. And I said, I think I want to get into running ultras. And I go, what do you think's the first step to like becoming like an ultra athlete? And he goes, the simple fact that you're sending me this message means you're already an ultra athlete. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
okay,
Love
I can get with that. And then my
it.
human brain was like, yeah, but
Yeah, yeah.
how do I do it? How do I do it? How do I do it? Right? Like the how monster came up.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
was fascinating. I just had a training plan and ran it, and that was it. And then the next year, I had an old lacrosse injury that acted up, so I took off like the first 4 months of the following year, and then COVID happened. And then this past year in 2021, I moved to Austin, and so I didn't do anything the first half of the year as far as races go. But then saw that I was like, I actually do want to run another race, and I was like, yeah, I could run another 50K. And then I was like, what if I double it? Like, what if I just do
Whoa.
100K? And then, so I did 100K in October of last year. And it was 11 hours, 18 minutes, came in second place. It was a dope race, definitely well worth it. And now this year, I think I'm going to do a 100 miler. But for me, like the whole ultra marathon
Ooh.
consciousness is just, it's such a weird concept for me. I think about it and I go, why would I want to run 100 kilometers straight? And it's just, there's this there's this
I would
beauty and
never do
simplicity in
that,
it.
by the way.
There's, for me personally, right? Like
Yeah,
in
yeah.
running in general, there's a simplicity.
Mhm.
All I have to do is throw on a pair of sneakers, and when it's warm enough out, above 65, just a pair of sneakers and some shorts and a hat, and head out the door. That's it. And it's
Mhm.
just me. I don't ever listen to anything. It's just me and my thoughts for sometimes
Wow.
40 minutes and for sometimes 11 hours. And it's the most, it can't not be intentional, right? Like trail running specifically, it's instant feedback. Anytime I've been on a trail and I have a thought of something that's maybe plaguing me, and I get into the story of it and how somebody else is wrong and how I'm going to do this thing, trip without fail.
Why you fall over?
Well, I'll hit my toe on a rock and I'll stumble a little bit. There have been a couple times I've actually fallen, but it's only been once or twice in the last 3 or so years. But regardless, it's instant feedback, right? You have to be present. If you're not present, you get fucked up, period. There's no ifs, ands, or asses about it. That's how it is. And for me, it's just one of those beautiful things of it's pure presence at its finest. And I think too, it's, you have a similar reality, right? Like we both work from home. You had an office. I choose to know if you still go to your office.
I still have the office. Yeah. It's a lifesaver.
So it's like we work from home or from our self-imposed office.
I can do what I want, really.
Exactly. And we're not really built to sit behind a computer for 8, 10, 12, 15 hours a day. And I personally find that I did a little experiment, right? So the first year I did a 50K. And I wasn't really focused on my business that year, right? I had just got done with a number of different programs and they didn't work, or they didn't work for me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to just run and train for this race. And I'm still going to do my business, obviously, because I got to make money, but I'm not going to like focus on growing my business. I'm just going to do this. And then last year I was very focused on growing my business and very focused on running, right? So it was, can I do 100K run and do 6 figures plus in my business? And the answer was yes. Did it. Sweet. Now I'm like, cool, I want to do 100 miles, but I want it to be like a great race. So it's very intentional. And the beauty of it too, Darragh, is that like I have to be very diligent with my time.
Yeah.
Like in order to get, like, I was just looking at my training plan for this next block, and there's at the peak 5 weeks out from race day, I have a 30-mile run one day and then a 20-mile run the next day. So that's 6 hours one day, and then potentially, and then 4 or 5 hours the next day of just running. So in order to fit that in, I have to get good sleep. I have to be hydrated. I have to have good nutrition. Like I have to be on my game. Like I can't slack. Like it's a force function, right? And I get in really, really, really good shape. I feel great, except for when I'm like, sometimes when I'm running really high mileage, my body is like, dude, stop. but very rarely does that actually happen. So, it's like, I get to be on my recovery game. I get to be on it. It's a keystone for me, right? Like when I'm training for something, it gives me purpose. It gives me, I approach life with a much more deliberate intent than I do when I'm not training for something, period.
Incredible. I've taken loads from that. 11 hours is running for 11 hours is fucking insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
The next one's going to be 24. So it'll be like, it'll be an actual like sleep deprivation test.
This is David Goggins stuff. David Goggins, you're coming for him, hey? But also just to highlight when Jeff, in case anybody doesn't know, I'm sure they do, but a trail is True Nature, a nature trail. And again, just walking through them things like you need. It's really interesting, because as much as I love nature, when you're walking nature trails, sometimes you forget to look up. And looking up is like where all the beauty is, because you're paying attention to the terrain, which is fucking insane that you run for so many hours along these things. So I can see where losing presence would cause you to trip. And also to bring it all the way back to the start of your story, it's like, that 10-hour Vipassana, 10-day silent Vipassana. It's really interesting that you're able to be with yourself for so long, because I know when I go to the bathroom, I'm bringing my phone, and a lot of people I know do that too, and in today's world, not a lot of people can be with themselves for like they're instantly looking for something to read, something to scroll, something to listen to, which is really interesting. I'll come back to. Watch whatever it is, they're looking for distraction
Mhm.
for whatever reason, and also habitually, because these fucking phones are a double-edged sword. But yeah, in regards to you not listening to anything, um, yeah, how two reasons or two questions. How is that? Well, that's obviously beautiful. You've answered, but also, um, why do you not?
The original reason why I didn't was because if I was listening to something, I would tend to not really be able to monitor my natural pace, right? Because music tempo has a particular cadence, has a pace.
Yeah,
So if
yeah,
I'm listening to something, I would engineer a playlist, obviously, to be slower at the beginning and then have more intense music and then have slower music at the end, right? So it would mimic the wave that I wanted to create in my training. But
yeah,
what happened instead was I'd be in the beginning of my run and I'd have a song on that was jacking me up, and I would sprint for a little while, and I didn't honor that natural pace. Just like caffeine. Why do we drink
yeah.
coffee in the morning? Is because we don't want to wait for that natural stride to kick in. We want to get
Straight to.
electroshocked straight to it, right? You know what I mean? Like, who doesn't want to get jacked right in the morning, you know? So, and initially it was because it was hard for me to regulate my pace.
Uh-huh.
And what it turned into was more of a practice in patience. It was just one of those things where I wanted to just be with my thoughts, and it felt better, honestly. It's not much. There's times where I would, but I mean, you know, I have an iPhone 13 Max Pro. It's like, who's going to want to carry? I'm not going to carry this thing on the trail.
You're gonna need a trailer.
It's gonna add weight. Like, I don't want to, you know, and then I bought a, you know, like a GoPro because I
Yeah,
want to capture, you know, film and do whatever else while I'm running. So, you know, it's just long story short is that I really appreciate having that time without any input. And what I do while I'm running is, it's funny because I remember I was running around the trail right before my race around, there's a path that goes around the river that comes through Austin, and the big
mm-hmm.
loop is 10 miles. And I had just gotten out on the trail, and I ran into two dudes that I know, and one of them was training the other guy, and I had apparently inspired the guy who was training the other guy, and he was sharing with me how I inspired him to run and do all this stuff. And he was like, well, how do you not listen to anything? And I go, I do. I just don't listen to music. I listen to, because it's like pebbles, right? Like, it's like dirt,
Uh-huh.
and little stones. And if you listen, you can hear everyone that's running by. You can hear,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that's what I mean. That's what I pay attention to when I run. It's like I hear the sound of my feet. I hear the bird. I hear the whatever. I hear what's happening around me, and it's like it's an amazing tool to be present with what's around. And if
Yeah.
I'm blasting music in my ears, I can't hear anything. And honestly, nothing pisses me off more than like when someone's ahead of me on the trail and I say, you know, I yell, I'm like, runner, runner behind, and they can't hear me. And then when I get close to them, they get scared as shit because they've got earphones in and they're blaring music, but I sprint
Yeah.
around them because I got to get by, and they couldn't hear me yelling behind them. So
Yeah, nah.
anyways,
They're getting scared because Seek and Destroy is
yeah,
coming up behind them from New York
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, to help themselves to their iPod or whatever's going on for
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
So
So that's the music bit, man.
yeah, yeah, incredible. Like, and you know what, as you were saying that, I could see how, because again, it's another distraction, isn't it? Um, Force and that, you know, because I love nature. I've got my
Mhm.
GoPro, it's just right there as well. I take it out on the surfboard with me, and
Oh
again,
yeah, I saw that.
yeah,
Yeah.
being in the surf is like, you know, it's that, not all the time when you're waiting for a wave, you can obviously think, but when you are not competing for a wave, because when there's other surfers there, it's a competition, you know, because and because there's no waves, it's the same.
Mhm.
You're not always 100% where it's going to peak up and where you can, you know, drop in and things like that. But being in that mode, because it's a stop start, but being in that, there's nothing else you can think of, like, which is because it all happens really fast. You've got to be
Mhm.
focused on the people coming down the line, also the wave that's coming. Are you in the right position? Are you on the board correct? Is the wave getting you? Are you facing in the right direction when you're gonna pop up, or you're gonna lash into the rocks? So there's a lot of variables that
Mm-hmm.
only presence that can only accept presence,
Yep.
because you can get hammered, and it's dangerous as well. You can fucking drown out there, but going into the rocks and all of those things. But yeah, just ultimate presence in nature. I love it. I really, really love being in nature, regardless on land or in the ocean. I've had some magical experience in regards to. I seen a shark out there.
Mm,
Fuck, man, that was scary.
seriously.
Yeah, yeah. Another time I was down at this new surf spot. A friend of mine brought me out on this boat, and we were the only people there. We went out at 5 a.m. So there's nobody there. You're not beside the beach. You're off like the face of a cliff, and not like huge cliffs, but cliffs, and pretty much there's no access there. So if anything happens, you're in trouble. There's no
Mm-hmm.
lifeguards or anything. But and the water was black, we couldn't see the bottom. But I caught a wave anyways, and when the first surf in a new spot is always this, anxious sort of, if there's rocks, is there rocks underneath me? How shallow is the water? Is there sharks? It's pitch black down there because the sunrise and sunset is sort of the timing. So I'm paddling off the boat, like barely putting my hands in the water, and you know, just like a little. Do you ever see
Little
the
T-Rex.
scary movie?
Yeah.
How about a round of applause?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just that little scrape in the water. But I caught a wave anyways, and I fucking delved in, barely got it, barely landed in the water. I was like already back up on my board. But instantly when you come back up, and you've got that little moment of shaking the water off your eyes. And when I opened my eyes, there was like 6 fins fucking hammering towards me. I was like, what the fuck? They're only like 2 or 3 meters away, at first you don't know, because it's that instant of opening your eyes, and then you get on the board and see that the dolphins. But there's a split second there where you're like, what the fuck? But anyways, nature, it's beautiful. And to bring it back to where you are at, and the way you're scaling up to 100K, you went from 50 to 100. Well, you skipped 50, but to 100 miles, and then running a business concurrently. So
Mm-hmm.
what I heard when you were speaking was laser focus.
Mm-hmm.
So does that correlate with your business? So when you're laser focused, just to add, Jeff is one of the uh, biggest ninjas in regards to time management that
Mm-hmm.
I have met in all my life. But yeah, running a business concurrent with the laser focus it requires for these marathons. How do you find that correlates? Is your business growing with that laser precision in your mind?
Absolutely, yes, is the answer. And it's interesting because I've gone back and forth in this, right? Like there's plenty of there's this book called Range, and it explores the conversation, because what we've been taught is this whole like 10,000 hour rule thing, and it takes this amount of time to become really good at something, and
Hmm.
you have to have a single focus, and yada yada yada. This book and this concept talks about having range, right? How like the jack of all trades is actually quote unquote better than the specialist. And of course you can make a case for anything, right?
Hmm.
But what I know personally is that just the choice to focus on one sport, it doesn't mean I don't do anything else. I cross train, right? Like I box. So
Uh-huh.
I train once a week in a gym to do like boxing and fighting and MMA.
Uh-huh.
And I also do weights but it all supports running. It supports one thing.
Hmm.
And having that mentality is, I really do believe the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So
Yes.
having that mentality in one area, I call it skill grafting, right? I had to do that with running. I had to get very specific. I had to follow a plan. I had to find supporting movements and exercises that got me stronger as a runner. And then I started to look at my business specifically last year, and I was like, what needs to happen? I turned off my podcast. That was one thing, because I was spending too much time doing that. I'm not saying podcasts are bad. I love podcasts. Obviously, we're doing one right now. But for me, I had spent 5 years building this show and I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted. So I was like, all right, cool. That's got to stop. Stopped everything. And then started to really look at what's actually working and what's not. And what I've discovered is that it's easy to try and do everything. It's fascinating. I'll say it this way. A lot of times what I've seen with myself and with other people is that we think that the more we do, the more we get. Meaning, if I do more in my business, I make more money. It's not the case. In fact, it's typically the opposite, right? When you try and do too much, you spread yourself too thin and you make less. So what I did was I started to just focus more on very concentrated activities that moved the needle. And what they typically had to do with, for me personally, was giving myself more time to do what I wanted to do outside of my business, because what I was doing was I was working too much. And I found that I was starting to resent what I had to do in my business because I didn't have a life. So I focused more on building a life that I enjoy, doing stuff with MPB, like hanging out with the guys, running, like doing all this stuff. I really only, unless I'm working on like a major launch or like a huge project, I typically only do focused, concentrated, like head down work, 4 to 5 hours a day tops. And then I'm doing other stuff in the periphery, of course, to like set it up, but like notifications off, head down, ultra focused. It's 4 hours, 5 hours a day. Right. And of course, it's not every single day the same way. But for me, it's like the more focused activity I could get, the better. Because the science is there too, right? Like multitasking or like distractions, it takes 21 minutes to refocus after being distracted.
Wow. There's a lesson.
So if you toggle your, multitasking is a computer term. Like multitasking is not a human biological term. It's a term for
it's the biggest lie, eh?
Yes. So when it comes to how to operate as a human, I call it finding your personal rhythm, right? Like everyone has a way that they function that's optimally, depending if you have a family, depending on if you're a night person or a morning person, depending on how many hours of sleep you need, depending on, your nutrition, your hydration, your mind, like there's a lot of things. And once you know enough about yourself, you can put together a plan and you follow it. And then when something's not working, you tweak it, right? So in short, Darragh, like focusing on being an ultra runner forced me to look at every other activity I was doing and be like, I love activity. But when someone's like, hey, you want to play volleyball on Friday? I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to do an extra weight session because I want to do X, Y, and Z. So it gives me a very clear yes and no, because I know where I'm going and I know what I'm doing. And it's easier to say yes and no to things. I still am guilty of FOMO. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, like I really want to go do that thing. And I want to go to like, this and this, but I'm just like, why? Sure, it may be fun, but is it fun at the expense of getting to the goal?
Yes.
Is it worth that short-term like hit?
Yes.
To sacrifice what I actually want?
And you know what? We could pull this apart right now. There's so many downloads coming in for me. I know we're on the clock, but just that people pleasing aspect of things, at what cost, discipline now, the importance of discipline now for there's a quote, isn't there? Discipline for the life you say you want. There's a quote, anyways, but the importance of all of that, at what expense, and also I already noted this down. The importance of cutting off what no longer works, and the importance of remaining unattached.
Yes.
And being in flow. So can you, like, you were running this podcast for 5 years, like, mental masturbation would lead people to say, this is I'm a podcaster, or I'm a fucking presenter, or I'm a whatever it is, because they are now settled into that identity of this is how the world sees me. If I'm not that, who am I?
Yep.
So can you explain the importance of being unattached to, your, would you say, your life's work? Or
Yeah.
No, uh, the importance of checking in with yourself to see if things are working and if they're not,
Mhm.
and being unattached to letting them go in order to level up and grow in your life.
1000%. This is a conversation of identity, right? Like,
Mm,
so this was very apparent also in the major reinventions I did, right? So when I was originally, I was a macrobiotic chef, which is a traditional Japanese diet. It was brought over to the West by Michio Kushi and Giorgio Sawa. And it's very specific. It is one way of thinking. It's
mm-hmm.
mostly cooked food. It's mostly it's based on principles of yin and yang. Like there's a very systematic way of seeing it and the way it is. When I got even in that field, I went into raw food
Mm-hmm.
after being a macrobiotic. So I was a raw foodist for a number of years. And making that transition from macrobiotic to raw food, I had to like people who were really like, you know, hell bent on their identity as a macrobiotic. They didn't want to like associate with me when I was a raw foodist. So I
Stop.
lost friends and I was very attached to that identity.
Shit.
Even bigger when I went from being raw for a couple of years to then not being raw vegan anymore and eating whatever, like having like incorporating eggs and incorporating more cooked food. I had to let the identity of being a raw food chef die because I was no longer a
Uh-huh.
pure raw foodist. Right.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And a lot of people get caught up in this because we even hear this linguistically with emotions like, I am angry.
Uh-huh.
I am a raw foodist.
Uh-huh.
This is an aspect of me, but it is not who I am.
Mm,
I'm
beautiful.
experiencing the emotion of anger. Oh, I feel anger is even a more apropos way to say it. But when it comes to identity and what we fixate on, it's just a phase. It's a
Mm,
wave, if you will, right? I was a chef. That was something I did. That is not who I am, right?
mm,
But there's nothing that can the reason that people have challenges with it is not because it's a big transition. It's because they can't be with the feeling of loss.
mm-hmm,
Like really let
mm-hmm,
that land, right? It's not about, oh, well, I'm this. It's like, no, I'm losing part of myself. And they just have to be okay with the emotion of grief and the experience of loss.
mm-hmm,
Perfectly natural, but
mm-hmm,
you can't avoid it.
mm-hmm.
Can't speed your way through it. Can't drink your way through it, smoke your way through it, avoid your way through it. You just have to go through it.
Mm.
That's it.
And in a nutshell, that's the you can either fight the wave of change or you can embrace the wave of change.
Mm-hmm.
Your surfboard and you can ride that out.
Yep.
Yeah, not to go deeper, but and not to add to that, question the MPB
Mm-hmm.
Brotherhood. Can you give us what's going on there? What's going on
Yeah.
there?
So, Empowered Brotherhood, we are here in Austin,
Empower.
Texas. And we started as like, actually, it started when I got into it. There was about 10 to 15 of us at a relatively large estate in Austin at a dude's house who had an at home gym and a large yard. We worked out there. Before that, it was in another guy's garage with just like 4 or 5 people. And it started to grow naturally at this other dude's house at the estate. We started to have 20, 30, 40, and then 50 people at the house. And we thought we need to grow this. And Preston Smiles, Stefanos Savandos, and Garen Jones are the 3 kind of co-founders of MPB. And then there's a handful of us on the leadership team who have also really helped to move this movement forward. Started as a workout, and now
Mm-hmm.
we are at some other physical locations working out outside. We just secured a gym that we're going to be in partnership with here. Our Telegram group is up to almost 900 guys. We have had
Wow.
upwards of almost 100 guys at some of the workouts. We have sponsorships for our events like Roan Fitness, Soul CBD, Vivo Barefoot. Like a lot of brands are sponsoring our events. And we've made a lot of progress in a very short period of time. And we're actually, in about 5 days, we are launching an online membership where we're going to have a year-long curriculum for men to really understand what it means to move from like me powered to empowered, right? Like
Mm,
what it means to have a community and
mm-hmm.
build who we are through the mentorship of men who have built a particular level of life and accomplishment and being, really, and how to really do that for ourselves. Right. So that is a global opportunity when that launches, and it's going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah, incredible. And where will people find that, Jeff?
If you just go to empoweredbrotherhood.com, you'll find that's a place where if you're local, if you're in Austin or in surrounding areas, you can join there and come to the physical workouts. And there will also be places on the website there to find how to get involved in the online membership. And currently at this recording, it's not on the website yet. It will be come Monday. So you're getting kind of like the preliminary announcement. It hasn't been completely launched yet, but when it does launch, it's going to launch big.
This is a delayed. It'll be a few weeks before this is released. Anyways, two things. First of all, Darragh Jones is on my list for this podcast. So get in his ear about it. Let him know that I'm coming for him. Coming to chat with him. And secondly, Jeff, where will people find you?
Yeah, best place these days to interact with me is on Instagram, and that's at Jeff Agostinelli, AGOSTINELLI. You can also go to jeffagostinelli.com or jeffa.co. To be completely transparent, website is a little bit outdated.
I was saying that.
So,
you had hair on there. I just went down this morning and you had hair on there.
Yep, it is. It's in the process of being redone now. It's that was built in 2015, I believe. And most of what I have is on Instagram, and is going to be there's some stuff on YouTube. There's going to be a lot more on YouTube this year. So you can find me there as well. And shoot me a message on IG. Let me know what landed.
Yeah, Jeff. Wow, it's been like incredible. Like a lot of that stuff I didn't know. So it's been an absolute pleasure to conversate with you in true and real depth. And thank you for your time. With every guest, we close out with, what does the waves of change mean to you?
When I hear that, the only thing that comes to mind is surrender. I truly believe that the best way, the least painful way, if you will, to navigate change is literally to just ride the wave, to surrender and ride the wave. And when we can cooperate with whatever that invisible force is, I think that the waves of change are a lot more fun.
Yes. Oh my God. So good. Jeff, thank you very much for your time, brother. We will be in touch. I'm super excited to see what comes about for you and everybody in your crew. So without further ado, thank you.
Been a pleasure, my man.
Peace.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If anything resonated for you, please leave a comment below. If there's anyone who may need to hear, please share. I love this. Have a lovely day.